Well, this, gentlemen, is a first for us. Kirk, we are about to cross into new virgin territory for our podcast.
2 guys, 1 Ian. That's what we're calling it.
We are. And Ian was on.
I did not agree to that.
That was his idea. We shot it down, but he stood firm on it.
But I can handle it.
And Ian came on how long ago? 2 months ago?
Yeah, I think so.
Roughly. And at the very end said something like, I don't agree with most of what you guys put out. Your social media is trash.
That is not true. I did not. The actual statement was some of the clips that I see that pop up occasionally. I do not agree with those statements.
And
sounds right.
That led to something of a statement of we should just discuss that on air. Tell us everything that you've seen, or the vast majority of things that you've seen that we have said that you think is social media nonsense or running science not accurate. And we will either defend ourselves or be like, I can't believe I ever said that, or this was taken out of context. Either way, I had a conversation with an athlete on a consult about a month ago, and they spit some words back at me that I said. They said, you said this one time, and I wrote it down because it's so good, and I don't remember saying it, and I don't agree with it. And
even better. Let's put that in a win for the Ian category already.
Yeah. So my hope is they took it the wrong way, but whether they did or not, I feel like this episode is going to set off a good trend of undoing things we've done in the past or clarifying things we didn't clarify in the past. So I'm looking forward to this because there has to be a lot of this out there.
Yeah, and that's just how social media is. And I think there isn't really a great filter or fact checker, if you will. It's just social media. You can put it out there and people can take it as gospel. And whether, like, we can all just say, oh yeah, I have peer-reviewed literature to support it. But unless you put the links and then those individuals go read it themselves, we can just say whatever. So, no, I appreciate you guys taking this opportunity. And I only made it through July of this year. So I started like in January and then made it to like June or July this year. And then I was like, I can't watch any more clips. Not out of anger, just like I just watched like 20 minutes of you guys talking straight with bouncing between things.
It's too much.
I feel like Brakken created his own excuse train right from the very beginning with not remembering what he says and not agreeing with past things he says. So he's already setting himself up to just soften the blow, fluff it up a little. Although I will say it's okay because I'm about to do the same thing.
Kirk, I actually think I may have found more on you than Brakken.
Great.
So.
No, and it has nothing to do with saying things that are true or false, or we just make stuff up sometimes because this is an opinion-based podcast. We throw facts or what we claim to be at times, but this is an opinion-based podcast. I know Ian's very fact-based, but I would say once a week, somebody sends me a text or an email saying something in reference to the podcast, and most of the time, I don't even know what they're referring to because we talk so much that we forget what we say.
That's a terrible intro.
Kirk, that whole paragraph you just said, I think you could have done without, and you maybe seen in better light.
No, I think that's a peek behind the curtain. You don't remember every sentence of every podcast that you say, and somebody will crack an inside joke about a one-off comment that you made to get a chuckle out of somebody, and then you forget it, and then they reference it a week later, and you're like, what is that about?
Yeah.
That's what I'm referring to.
I get it. And
no, we're keeping it in. I'm standing by it.
All right.
So, before we get deeper into this, I want to be clear about why we're doing this. The first is pure entertainment. Pure entertainment. The second is that we do want to dispel anything that is actually wrong, because as much as podcasts are entertainment, we do position ourselves as people who know something about endurance sports and then tell people to listen to us for knowledge. And so if we've been wrong, we need to be checked. If we've been misunderstood, we need to clarify. And entertainment is hopefully going to be a big piece of that. But like, I started all the way back with Benny, right, years ago, and I've listened to some things I've said back then, And I'm not super proud of all of it. Right? That was 5-6 years ago. My theories, my beliefs have evolved. And some of it I listen to and I say, you didn't say that well. And other things I listen to, I said, that was wrong. So we do need this. Like, fact checking is important in life. So I am not here to defend myself at all costs. We're here to clarify things. And if we end up defending ourselves the whole time, then so be it.
I'll straight up call you out on it as well. Like, because a lot of what I've found may be taken out of context because of the short clips, and clarification is needed. And I think that's important, especially for individuals who may be in those different use case scenarios or different scenarios where it may apply to them or it may not.
Yeah. And what we could do is show the entire clip beginning and after from our archives to give context. But I think it's better that we don't, because that's not how people consume our information.
I did not save the clips. I just watched a bunch and wrote.
Right. I'm saying we could spend a month prepping this episode and give you what we talked about first and then why. But that's not how people consume them. So that's not how we should be presented with our own words out of context.
Well, this is also just half a year. So the next episode, we could do that.
I don't want to. That's way too much of a litigation at that point.
At the end of the day, we can blame our social media guy and I'll go home happy.
Sounds good.
Just kidding, Zoom. It's not your fault, buddy. You're doing a great job. That's our guy, Zoom.
All right, Ian,
Zoom.
Let's get this thing started. Are you going most to least egregious, or are you just going chronologically?
I have it written chronologically because that's how I went through it.
Okay.
But I'm probably not going to start chronologically because some of the ones I think will spiral even further than we want to.
Right. To set the stage here. So you looked at clips from, let's say, January, you said, to June or July. Mm-hmm. So how many clips did you watch approximately, and how many of those were full of errors? Let's say, like, what percentage do you think we're hitting the ball, and what percentage are we not?
Oh, you guys are well, like, on the money.
In your opinion. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have how many?
It's probably 15%.
Oh.
It's a low number.
And you are gospel. You are said God of knowledge and facts in this regard. So everybody understands.
By no means am I claiming that at all.
People are going to be like, who's this Ian guy and why does he hold the stick? I'm just saying, people are going to want to know.
That's fine. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Ian Hosek. I'm a running coach as well as a member of the endurance community. I have my roots in obstacle course racing. I coach athletes in hybrid racing, OCR, trail running, marathoning, and beyond in endurance sports. Dip my toes into adventure racing as well. And I have a history of sports science. I had the opportunity to work at Nike for a number of years and interact with their super secret lab people of PhDs, and just have expanded my knowledge and education in endurance athletics over the years. I'm very, very heavily science and literature based and metric based. Just as a quick brief intro.
All right. So as you were prattling on, I did some math. We both did our strength right there. And if we have 480 episodes, and let's just say the ratio holds true, that 15% of what you consumed you found to be suspect.
That is an estimate.
And this is all estimation. That's fine.
Okay. I just need to preface that this is not like fact-based numbers.
Running math is all estimated. So
that's not true. Okay, let's just start there.
All right, but just to say why it's important. If you disagreed, well, let's just say 10 to 15% of what you read today or consumed today. And that held true over the course of 480 episodes at an average runtime of 90 minutes. That is 6,480 minutes spent deceiving people.
You guys are snake oil salesmen.
That is 108 hours of deception. That is 4.5 days spent lying to people. 4.5 days.
And the issue with this is Brakken hasn't gotten math right, but 15% of the time he's done it on this podcast.
I just used a calculator.
We really don't know if those numbers can be trusted. Let's get into it.
I mean, we can just start with all running is an estimation.
Well, that's hyperbole. full on.
Okay,
I
then
followed up saying you're
let's
prattling
move
on with that. So no, let's just jump right in and
Okay.
start with your headline hook here.
Brakken at one clip, this is one of the ones that stood out to me, used the term system shock. And I want that further defined. It was in relation to high intensity. And then there's a follow-up question to that. But what is a system shock? What is the physiological or psychological benefit to it? And in this context, why weren't they doing it in their athletic routine in general?
Do you have any context for how it was used? Can you
I
use it
can
in
look.
this?
I'll look back as we're
It was
talking
an
and find it.
it was an individual. It was like 17 weeks of uninterrupted training block or something, and then he did a time trial or something, and then it felt hard for him, and then you guys did a system shock, so he felt better on race day.
Now this is why it's going to be difficult, because I could never understand how I would say we did a system shock, but I said
you implemented a system shock, and I believe it was in relation to a specific intensity workout.
Okay. If I had to explain what I said then without hearing what I said, my guess is that the time trial was a system shock to him, to his system.
Before
and we did.
hold
Go
on,
ahead.
I have the clip. Why don't
Oh,
I
play
just
it.
play it? Well,
Play
right,
it.
I have it. I found it. It's all the way back
good
in
work.
March. So, well, I think I can find these. If he has a note like system shock, I can go for this up.
All right, play it right into the mic.
Oh, let's hold on. Give me.
I don't like that we're starting with me and I have no defense yet.
All right.
15 weeks uninterrupted. We're a year further in your training life, and you're 90 seconds slower on the incline.
Oh, yeah.
I ran the same strategy as last time. I finished strong. I thought I was doing well. It was so uncomfortable up front. So then we pulled up his Strava and we looked at the segments up there. And he lost all the time in the first third of it. And then he PR'd in the middle and end sections. You just can't handle intensity right now. It was a system shock to you. But when you were shocked with that in your system, you were able to still dig into it and keep working. We added a little bit more intensity. We did a few OCR 400s. He did an OCR sim. And then we did one more transition workout. Got into some spice, but just doses of it. And then he came out, and on race day, he was comfortable again.
Okay, I'm happy with that. I'll still stand by that, Ian.
Oh, great. Let's have some clarification.
This athlete is actually, I'm going to call him out. His name is Andy Boudreau. He lives in Colorado, and he ran the Manitou Incline as a time trial before and after a 15-week block of training. And all metrics pointed towards he was better across the board, and he got worse on the incline. And so what I was saying is that we had done a lot of threshold and sub-threshold work, and he went highly anaerobic. You know how you've done the Manitou Incline, right?
I have not, but I've done enough incline.
I've done things. It ramps like this.
Incline.
So you barely feel like you have to break stride on the really narrow stairs, and then you're up, and so it just sucks you into working way too hard, and then you're just tipped. And so that's what happened on this first one. I was saying he had a system shock of intensity and overload of work. He hadn't worked anywhere near that intensity for a while. And then he was so fit that he was able to recover from that and PR the next two segments of the climb. And we had to feel that a little bit more. When I say system shock, I mean literally like jumping into ice cold water. If you're not used to doing that, you have like this, everything clenches up, and you have to teach yourself to exhale and breathe relaxed through that rather than clench against it. Like you are shocking your systems.
This is a
psychological.
This is in relation to like a psychological thing.
It's both. For example, like jumping into cold water.
When I hear the athletes say these things, and what you say is, I hear, oh, the athlete's aerobic threshold or anaerobic threshold increased over the 13-week block, whatever. Okay. Ran it slower. Then I hear that he PR'd the middle and upper sections, meaning I agree with you. He went out way too hard or too fast on that lower section.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that his body wasn't ready for it. It means he didn't have, this is my perspective, he didn't have the mental understanding or limiters in place to not go that hard. You say he's done a lot of threshold work. The Manitou Incline is just a pure threshold run. He should have hit threshold and stuck it the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
For clarity, sorry, he went out too slow, I thought.
No, he went out way too fast.
He went out fast, died. So the first segment's like 6 minutes long.
Oh, how many segments are you referring to here?
think
So he
there's
went out
3
fast,
total.
died, but then recovered and finished well.
Yes.
Got
Yeah.
it. Okay.
Yeah. But even if that's the case, like, he must have gone out so hard on that initial portion that, to me, that's not even a system shock. He was actually in a great spot to actually push that hard. He just didn't have the race strategy to do that.
If now we're talking about a year and a half ago, this athlete did this workout, so I'm a little hazy. But I think the background on this was he did his first time of trial coming off of OCR season, which finishes in a classical sharpening sense with very anaerobic efforts, with more rest. And so my thought was he tolerated getting out hot better early on. Then we started our off season and did a lot of sub-threshold and threshold work. And he probably didn't start out much different, but it was a shock to him what it felt like to have to really deal with that intensity again. Because even though the Manitou Incline you said is a threshold test, I do not believe it is.
What test would you say it is?
It's
like,
somewhere
what
in
energy,
between that.
What's energy system would you be operating in for the Manitou Incline?
Oh, well, I mean, it's if his is done in 26 minutes, 27 minutes,
yes.
that's over. I mean, my guess is if I had to look at his heart rate, that he was above lactate threshold heart rate within like 6 or 7 minutes minimum. And he spent probably 10 beats above that the rest of the time.
I would heavily disagree with that statement. You can't operate above, like, well, maybe lactate, but like critical power or your true anaerobic threshold and sustain that for 26 minutes.
No, but if you take 6 minutes to get there and then you die and fall apart and you're sit at it for it. Yeah.
Yeah, you can sit at it, but yes. You said he operated above it for what, 10 minutes? Or 10 BPM above it the entire time. It's what you just said.
And yes, you can operate above that.
No, you can't. You physiologically get brought back to it.
Ooh, okay, so I'm glad that we're here. Kirk.
So it depends on how long you're operating in it.
Okay, so now we're going to get into semantics. Can you sit at that number with it never changing for 20 minutes? No, but can you average that heart rate for 2 hours? Yes.
Yes, I agree with that.
Mm-hmm. And so if you die, recover, regain,
we need to see his heart rate.
Anaerobic?
We need to see his heart rate graph. Maybe he sandbagged so hard in the middle, he dipped below LT, recharged.
We're even moving away from his a little bit. Okay. But in theory, you can go VO2 max early in the effort and average above your lactate threshold heart rate for the entire time.
And just to chime in, because this is your battle for now anyways, so I'll interject shortly, is like we have this conversation, Ian, I know you don't listen to our episodes much, but about how I averaged like literally above lactate threshold for a 2-hour trail race and being like, how does this make sense? Well, the peaks and valleys and the lactate buffering and all of that throughout.
Yes.
Like I had many a period of times on descents where it fell and then it rose above and stayed up on a climb for 6 minutes. And so we were dissecting like the nuances of like, how is this possible if you can only sustain threshold for 30 to 60 minutes, but I did it for 2 hours. And so you're kind of referring to that conversation, Brakken, just to refresh the listener when we dissected that. But he was just running straight uphill nonetheless.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So
just saying.
You can average. However, like a couple things are at play here. And one of them is, I'm assuming Brakken, this individual was more recovered going into the time trial, or did he do it fatigued? I don't know how you schedule time trials.
Again, we're talking a year and a half.
Yeah,
this one, my guess is My guess is he was pretty recovered because we were in the off season. So
Yes.
he had probably leg fatigue, but we hadn't done anything spicy that week.
Yes. And as it's been demonstrated, lactate threshold does change, and it can change even day to day, and especially more when you're recovered versus fatigued. And more fatigued versus more recovered, that is a fairly large spectrum. So the more recovered you are, the higher it'll be because your central nervous system is not putting a limiter on your body. So you can actually, we can say he operated at or above fatigued lactate threshold, and that would, I understand that. Lactate threshold also is usually slightly below critical power, or critical threshold, or anaerobic threshold. So often you can operate above lactate threshold by several BPM, but once you get to that like true thresholds that science has found more reliable than lactate threshold, it is uncommon to average above those.
So if you're talking ventilatory threshold 2, which is
I don't like those. VT1 and VT2 are overused in my opinion.
Interesting. Those are my preferred.
It is great for we're already getting into the weeds. It is great for like general conversation, but when discussing with like an industry or looking at peer-reviewed literature, those can be defined as through different means. Mm-hmm. So like you're looking at VO2, you're looking at heart rate, whatever. Like whatever metric defines that can shift between like laboratory testing.
If you don't have a lab at your disposal, my belief is ventilatory thresholds are the easiest for a regular athlete to find.
Yes. I mean, with today's technology, you can just go out with a watch and your heart rate strap, and your watch will do a bunch of shit. Or you can do any of the number of testing methods out there, just like solo testing.
Assuming steady
not even assuming steady state, and yes.
Yeah. Anyway, to answer the only question you asked originally, how do I define system shock and why would I use it? I literally define it the way I used to talk to athletes preparing for Tahoe or Killington swim. That the first time you jump into that high altitude lake, every natural response of your body is to clench and to prevent any ingress, and everything clenches and you burn through energy and your breathing starts getting really disrupted, and you can even get instant cramping in your torso from such a strong reaction to the shock of entering the water. That is how I picture system shock, a stimulus that is so foreign to you that you recoil and tense, where the only way to be fast in running is to be relaxed. And so when I say a system shock, I'm talking about a stimulus that provides a physical and, yes, psychological reaction to it that's disruptive to you actually accessing your fitness.
Perfect. Okay, thank you for the definition. I will say, and this is where I'll preface kind of my stuff, anyone out there running a time trial over like 5 minutes, don't even remotely go to system shock.
Well, it's a sliding scale of tension.
It is for sure. I agree. Like the closer you get to those shorter time trials, the more of a system shock you'll experience or get closer to it. But for aerobic or endurance time trials, you shouldn't really ever get there unless you're in the final push.
Yeah.
And that's not anything on you guys. That's just clarification for the audience. Given what you said, which I understand.
That's very
now,
fair.
Yeah.
I think there's
time
a component
should be built into at worst, steady state at best. Should never be positive split.
Well, it almost always is with newer athletes, so that is going to be a fact that remains.
But that's just it. That's why I wanted to bring that up. Yeah,
I think there's also
go out slow.
I think there's when you talk system shock, like you're not even talking about like the nervous system in the CNS and firing at such a high rate and what just work and stress looks like on the system. You can go into complete shutdown after your body tips too early just from like a nervous system front, let alone if all you've been doing is like not getting close or breaching threshold in training, and then he goes and he tips early. It's like going out in a sun that's more intense than you've experienced recently, and you're going to get burnt, right? And so I still think there's a whole like RPE aspect to this that is completely unscientific, just being like, am I familiar with this feeling on an emotional front and a CNS front that I'm even prepared to handle it? Or do I self-implode because I haven't felt it enough recently? And so I'm so unfamiliar with it that it's a system shock just from an effort level. And you're right, that's a misgauge of effort is what it is. So it's boiling down to what you're saying. But I think it's almost, we can talk how hard he was working like physiologically, but I think it's probably just as much the other side of the coin as well. I remember running the 1500 meters in college, and Brakken, you ran the 8, and it's like, how did that first 8 or 15 feel every single season, even though you were training hard? It felt like, talk about a system shock. It went terribly, and you felt like you had no decisions or moves to make. And after you ran a couple of them, you became familiar, could relax into it, and then embrace the effort. And then you run your best races mid and late season. And it's almost like you test my VO2 max, it probably hasn't moved at all from the first race of the year to the last race of the year. But the other factors have changed. And so there's like that side of the conversation too.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, it sounds like system shock might be another term for practicing race strategy.
Maybe, actually.
Could be. And this is one of those, if we had to look at this as a scientist, it's inappropriate to use a term that doesn't mean anything unless you explain how you view that term.
And that is why
is like tempo,
I brought it up.
Right? Our running world is filled with people saying things that mean something to them, and they might be wrong about it. And I just did that.
Striders ain't real. Get out of here, your Striders. Nick Riker, your Striders, get lost. Continue.
Interesting.
All right, I have to let the dog in real quick.
Let the dog in.
Hey, sorry that I keep checking my phone. I'm navigating something with the wifey.
You do what you got to do.
Well, no, she's getting off of work early today, and I might need to step out when she gets home just real quick for like a minute to help her with something.
With your digital background, you look like Predator coming in out of his active cloaking device when you re-enter the frame.
It's a nice piano.
Sick. As Brack and I were talking earlier, I actually did play piano growing up.
Oh, Frere Jacques?
I played for Elise, played some Beethoven now and then. Yeah, I was okay.
Nice. Are we going to the next one, or do we want to? Because we could spend an entire hour talking about this, depending on how many tangents we want to take.
I only want to clean it up by addressing Andy specifically. We applied a lot of things to you that did not occur on that day as we spiraled. You have been accused of a lot of pacing malfeasances that may not have occurred to you. Just
yes,
don't.
This
don't
was
take
a
it all on
short
the chin.
clip, and I mean, I'm glad the next race went well.
I will say
this
is
not trademarked. We don't have the TM in the upper corner, so it is still up for grabs.
The Manitou Incline is the very hardest thing to pace I've ever attempted in my life. Fit, unfit, trained, practiced, it is really difficult to get that thing right. And the people like Joe Gray, who have set this thing sub 20, are just absolute. Like I can't even comprehend it. Like I can comprehend a 350 mile.
Mount Marathon is the same way.
It doesn't make sense. I can comprehend a 201 marathon. I can't comprehend a 17-minute Manitou Incline. Doesn't make sense.
It's bonkers. Yes, I have plenty more we can dive into.
Go to Kirk, please.
Okay.
I've done no defending at this point, so
I have a good one. And this is more theory, but Kirk, at one point you reference adding like hard threshold intervals into your long run because it is less stimulus on the body, I think is what you're saying. Overall, like you drop the mileage, but then add in long runs or add in intervals. Um,
I want to know what clip it is, so I want to like find it and play it. But does it say like
you
a
said
headliner?
it twice, actually.
Okay. I could see how that would be confusing if that's how it was said. so right.
Yeah, it's
not gonna
something
argue with you
along
there.
those lines.
So we have these like little face like for each of the clips. And so you said System Shock last, and we have a clip. I remember it says that's the the stagnant photo, and so I didn't know if you had something like that for this clip. That's all. Then I could find it easily.
It's something along. I believe when you guys are talking about marathon training, it's probably like.
Oh, it was a marathon training podcast. One of those.
It was one of the
Okay.
marathon training podcasts, and in reference to the long run for marathon training. And you were saying like doing a long run, 22 miles 1 week, and then alternating to 15 miles with some quote quality. And that's, I do quality in quotes because this is various definitions of
That's
what
a
quality
word
means.
I didn't realize triggered people in our space, but some people really don't like the word quality.
And the gray area around it, the lack of understanding of what
I mean,
we're even
every
referring to.
workout you do should be quality. Every workout should serve some function.
Well, purpose
Correct.
would
And that's
be a
what people
word.
say. Every workout I prescribe is quality. It's like, yeah, sure.
I mean,
But I
think
don't like
you
saying
and
hard work.
yeah, I think you guys use quality in reference to higher intensity workouts.
We do.
Okay.
Maybe we should relook at that. That's fair because I do get questions about that.
Because
That's one of those.
but you also in the same breath also say like the bread and butter to endurance training is the non-sexy workouts.
100%.
So those two are at a mismatch. You have quality, and then you say things that actually make you faster, and those don't line up.
I think I'll take, Kirk, I don't know.
This isn't even what I was talking about.
No, but again, this is where this thing's going to go.
Well,
I'll take this one.
Okay.
I mean, if you want to take the brunt of this, but my high school coach called our interval sessions, our threshold sessions, not threshold, quality.
In college,
don't even get me started on high school and college.
College,
coaches.
it was the same thing. We literally had like quality day written on, like that
Would
was
say
what it
easy
was.
recovery or quality.
Yeah.
Those were our
thing.
labels, and so I've never even considered calling it anything else.
It should be,
but it's a misnomer.
It is, and
it's
also
an interesting conversation.
If we think about where running science has come in the past 30 years from like drinking beer and not eating like constantly and just running as hard as you can all the time to where it is now.
Wait, what? What are you referring to? Drinking beer and not eating and running?
So we look
That's like the Western Ultra scene still.
Yeah, I mean, yes.
Hammer in the canyon, chug a beer.
Yes.
But we're vegan.
The shift in some of the mentality in like sports science and especially around nutrition in the past. This wasn't even one of the things I was talking about. But when we look at like high school coaches and their education in sports science versus what we see today, like they would always say, "Oh, thinner is better." But they wouldn't always say. That was a common phrase and mentality among high school and college coaches, and we still see that in certain older school mentalities and theories. And sports science has shown us that's ridiculous. Eat a lot of food if you're running a lot, and have like a good healthy body fat percentage, eat tons of protein, fuel during the workouts, performance increases. That's something. But using terminology like quality that are just because our high school coaches use it doesn't seem like a good reason to me.
Well, why don't you tell me this then? No, hold on.
I would judge someone for doing that. So I feel exposed.
You have don't.
That's why I'm here today.
Don't be an apologist. This is BS. Stop.
I'm not trying to make you guys apologize or feel bad. I'm just calling out from my perspective, from a third party perspective. And
you have to call it something. So what if you were to say it quickly so you can move forward with conversation? What is the word? Because yes, everything should have a purpose, and yes, mostly
intensity. Just say intensity.
But intensity is a sliding scale.
And quality isn't?
Sure.
No. We're not saying it's better, but what is better?
Yeah, what is? I'm not. Yeah,
I am saying intensity. I'm saying intensity. That's what I would say.
Implying high intensity.
Higher intensity, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's part of the issue. I consider a long run quality work. Because my definition that doesn't relate to quality is that it requires recovery. So
literally every workout you do should require recovery. Otherwise, what's the point of the workout?
Well, I'm saying like if you do zone 2 one day, you don't need to do zone 2 the next day to recover from that work.
If it's a long run.
Right. So which is why a long run to me I would call a quality. But I need a label that encompasses all runs that need a reduction in intensity the next day.
Something along the lines of something that has to do with volume, I would say.
Right. We don't have a term. Half the people use quality, the other half detest it. And I'm hearing it through their eyes and ears for the first time.
I don't detest it. I'm not saying I detest it. I'm saying it can be misunderstood because I didn't know long run was in the quality. I didn't know that was encompassed in there.
Only for me.
Yeah, Kirk, is long run quality for you?
No, unless it's a quality long run, Ian.
Yes, exactly. And this is where the confusion comes in because we have these varying definitions, even between two individuals who use the same word. And this goes to the tempo label as well.
Sure.
But
it's funny because we've ranted
anything.
against tempo, and it did it.
Can I do that?
We rant against tempo, and then we use quality.
Yeah.
So do you want to keep talking about that, or should we just talk about what I said?
Let's talk
Go
about
back to
what you
said.
Which was along the lines of now we have we're prefacing it with a quality long run, which is a long run that incorporates intensity into it in the form of intervals. And you didn't specify which intervals they were. You may have said threshold intervals. I don't know.
They can vary, but yeah.
Okay, and I'm assuming those are longer intervals, like greater than 3 minutes.
Or float style, like I'm a big fan of, let's say, where you're feathering the gas on and off. So it could be 60 minutes, sure, but with a prescribed recovery pace or effort. Yeah.
Understood.
Yep.
And I think possibly you were doing this because the long run, the 22 miles, is a lot on the body. And then you're taking it back to 15 miles. This was the example. And then adding an intensity on top of that. And as we all know, volume is a function of intensity and time. So Kirk, what it's the same, like you're adding the same volume. It's the same volume. Why wouldn't you just do a long run?
Yeah. So fair question. My belief is if the goal is to race your best on race day, and this is anecdotal and over years, that I believe that you will be further down the road on race day if we sub out every other week's traditional long run or long run with optional cut down with some form of higher output work. And because there's higher output work, I just like to back off the volume to keep you maybe slightly less likely to become injured, right? Availability is the best ability. So a lot of athletes can't handle 2 quality sessions a week. And so sometimes we may do 2 quality one week and then the next week we may not. And often,
so your definition of quality.
Sorry, yes. Oh, sure.
We have the same definition.
No, you don't.
It only varies on long runs.
That's my point. But Kirk is probably saying long run not included. So
correct.
Intervals, threshold tempo, not long run.
Great. So we've established our phrase works. Is what I'm taking.
That's all I'm getting. This is from back to this. It's just more for what I believe will get you to the finish line faster when it matters. And if you're not healthy, that won't do that. And I believe just not a long run every weekend can be sometimes a little more damaging for some, especially those without great mechanics and long ground contact time and things like that. And so I think it's more personal bias through experience, I would say, but there's no science behind that necessarily.
Understood. Even when describing that, you still went away from my question or comment, which was you said, I do it because it's less volume. We just established it's really not less volume because you're adding an intensity.
Well, it's definitely less steps. It's definitely less times your feet hit the ground. It's less time your heart is beating. So I
Is
would
it?
say it's
Have you measured that? Because when you add intensity, you are increasing cadence and increasing heart rate.
Also increasing stride length, though.
Yes, but cadence also goes up. So like
Mm.
it's, but you're also even in like if we look at a force profile, you're generating greater force, which is more impact on joints, tendons, ligaments, muscles.
well,
Assuming
let
good mechanics.
Well, I mean,
A
it's
crappy
even.
jogger will hurt themselves quicker jogging than running fast.
I will. Okay, I will agree with that.
but
But
I,
you can also go in the inverse direction. People who don't know how to run fast and run beyond their capacity. Like you hear someone in the gym who is running on the treadmill and then they're nice, soft, and quiet, and then they kick it up to like something that they're not comfortable with,
Mhm.
and they turn into an elephant. And you're like, that sounds painful. So that's the more force thing. But yes, that was my comment.
Well, I would argue, I mean, generally for my marathoners, and I got a slew of them, and they know, generally the cadence how I like to cycle, at least as a baseline. I would say the quality, they'll work up to 20, 22 potentially, but most of the quality long runs, as I define them, usually cap around 14. And I would argue that is significantly less volume, even if there is intensity. There's whole other factors that come with it, of course, like
The
the
amount of
output.
intensity.
Yeah, but I would just argue like time on feet is notably less. So I probably am looking at it through that lens. That's it. Yeah.
Okay. So there's time on feet, but then like we'll break it down even further. We have central nervous system fatigue, and we have soft tissue and hard tissue fatigue. Um, those are the two main things that would make up like stress on the body. Time on feet, you could encompasses both, but like what metric are you using to gauge that? Just like, oh, it's general, they're out there less time, or
Excuse me. Yeah, and then when you take a step back and you go to the 10,000-foot view and you say, okay, if I look at the week as a whole, maybe I'm at 65 one week and then I'm at 55 the next, and there's sort of this ebb and flow in there in which you say that this week was uh, at if you're just looking big picture, it was just less as far as, yes, time on foot. I think that's as simple as that, and mileage. And so I've just seen so many marathoners uh, or runners in general, like the long run is just such a staple on the weekends that I must go out and get 3 hours in the mountains, or I must go out and hit my 20 miles every weekend in my marathon build. And some of those athletes don't get there. And I just find that, yeah, I think it's just, I don't know if I need to justify it any more than that. But if your argument is volume and you're saying, hey, the intensity is replacing the volume, so they're two of the same, like you can make that argument. I'm not going to really argue with like stress on the body. I'm talking straight performance. That's it.
got it. So that, I
Yeah.
mean, kind of. I mean, my labeling of volume is a function of time and intensity. So like by lowering the time and keeping the same volume, or keeping the same intensity, it's a lower volume. If you keep the same time, increase intensity, it's a higher volume. If you decrease time and increase intensity, it depends on the levels and the factors, and that scales differently.
So you're talking like TSS or some sort of
Yes,
score for training worth.
stress score, whatever.
Yes.
Yes, whatever you want to label it as. TRIMPS is kind of training impulse is kind of
Relative effort, Strava goers.
yes. All of these, and that's how I define volume.
Mhm.
So when I hear, Kirk, I hear you saying the like looking at the big picture and looking at 55 miles versus 65. However, if you do 65 miles at zone 2 and you do 55 miles of straight threshold work, that's obviously 55 miles of straight threshold work is going to feel a hell of a lot harder than 65 of zone 2.
Yeah.
I
agree
think
with
where
that
we're
statement.
getting hung up, and I agree with both of you, is the definition of the word volume. Where volume is the way we speak with volume, we're talking literally quantity. How much fills a space? Not is the 5-gallon jug, is it full of lead or water? or feathers, it's 5 gallons of volume.
Yeah, well, that still doesn't answer it, because that you could.
What
is
is?
it?
In
Well,
that case, 120 minutes is 120 minutes of volume, and 90 minutes is 90 minutes of
okay, so
volume, regardless
you're
of the makeup.
understood. You're saying you are defining volume as the quantity only, not feathers or lead on top
Yeah,
of it.
when we speak on this podcast, I think historically we only say the word volume to say mileage or minutes or kilometers
Again,
or
this is just more clarification.
yes.
This, as someone who doesn't regularly listen to the podcast and
Yeah.
has a brain who thinks differently, these
Well, and I
are
think
things.
across the running world, if you sampled 1,000 runners and said, what's your volume per week? They would all assume you're talking either distance or time.
Yes, I would agree that.
And so we speak in that general tense.
I get it as someone who is a coach and like has my like who knows volume doesn't mean that, because well, in when talking with athletes and prescribing volume is a function of intensity and time. So what
I've
would
never
you
heard a single person say that other than you.
Okay, what would you describe what I'm saying beyond like TRIMS or training stress score?
I
Like
think
an
that's just
easy-
it. Yeah, there's stress score for the week or your total.
Your
Got it.
output. I don't know, even that.
Yeah. I think I would stick to not
Output,
stick
I
to,
mean,
but that's as you're describing it. I'm like, oh, you're talking TSS or TRIMS or whatever you want.
would
CTL.
you, would you argue, or I would argue, that is a much better way to track athletes' progression and stress at the 10,000 foot view?
If you had to pick one, yeah.
Yeah, well, obviously, but we
For
have
sure.
the option to pick. Like, we can look at an athlete's weekly mileage, or we can look at this stress score, like as coaches and individuals.
I would say yes. And as just a pure opinion, I almost couldn't care less
Good
about
catch.
stress score when for the general athlete as compared to time spent in zones.
That is defining it.
It is, but it's not personal. For example, and I know I understand your reaction, so I'm going to try to clarify this for you.
Yes.
So I have a friend named John, and he and I, let's say, both run 10 by 1,000 at whatever your favorite version of anaerobic threshold definition is. I'm going to call it LT right now. The next day, he runs at low zone 3. I run low zone 2. His stress score goes up, but because he is an aerobic monster, he is a slow twitch athlete and I'm a fast twitch athlete. My run stresses me every bit as much as him or more. And his TSS for the week has gone up and mine has gone up less. And so in terms of simply applying it randomly to athletes, I think TSS is great. I think we're splitting hairs. I think TRIMP is great. I prefer to see minutes spent in zones that you've established are the best for you for that purpose. So I'd rather say how many anaerobic minutes have you spent? How many aerobic minutes have you spent? Whereas TRIMP will grade your aerobic minutes from bottom of zone to top of zone. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so over the course of weeks and months and years, you may account for an enormous percentage of your TRIMP or TSS variation coming from the difference between low zone 2 and high zone 2.
I understand that.
Yeah.
The fact that you've said you guys run the same workout in you zone 2, him zone 3 the next day following whatever session you did, the 10 by 1,000,
Mm-hmm.
and yours went up less and his went up more, and you say it's more stress on your body, what are you referring to?
What I'm saying is that let's say I got +8 for the day and he got +12, but we recovered the same exact amount. So it looks at the end of the week like he's done more work or I've done less work, but we both accomplished the purpose of our recovery run and we're ready for our next one. So at the end of the week, it appears in a stress score that he has worked in a way that would provide more fitness, when the difference in those zones is not a fitness maker. If those points had been put towards more threshold work, that would quantify to me as race fitness. But it's like there's useless stress that's been added to the week because it doesn't know how it's affecting your body. Again, what I'm saying is we're splitting hairs. I could use trim for TSS and be happy.
I didn't understand the following day was a recovery run. And when you say recovery run, is that a just zone 2 run for aerobic benefit?
Aerobic benefit. But
Okay.
we also know that some people don't need to run at the same zone level as other people's in order to recover.
Well, zone 2 isn't about recovery.
Well, now we're going to start splitting hairs of what you mean by recovery. Purpose is we left a quality, an interval day Monday, and we have one Wednesday. In the purpose of 2, we're going to gain a little bit of aerobic development while being ready to work again on Wednesday.
Understood.
And I have to do that at 120 beats per minute, and he can do it at 145.
Understood. But if the stress score system is set up properly, and he does operate a little bit more than you, he will get a minor physiological benefit. I don't necessarily think, and it depends on where he's operating, because this is getting more into the weeds than ever, but like gray zone is diminishing returns. So like it's not as necessary for him to operate in that space, zone 3 or whatever, as you being in zone 2. So I agree. I think this may be a location just based on theory and personality that we will differ, both you and Kirk and myself, on how we look at athletes overall from a larger view.
Yeah. And like I said, if all I could use was Training Peaks TSS, I'd be 100% happy with that. But if I get to pick, I don't pick it. Unless I know an athlete intimately. And unless they can interact with Training Peaks effectively and they wear their heart rate monitor and they update their zones constantly.
Yes. I understand.
It requires more input, which requires a certain type of athlete.
And that's
I don't
why
screen my athletes for that, and I don't force them into that.
Yeah, I get it. I work with a variety of athletes. Some of them really enjoy working with heart rate monitors. Some of them are like, Ian, this is ridiculous.
Speaking of, I'm just going to take a hard left turn here.
I really enjoyed that conversation. Thank you guys for helping me understand more. And I think you guys got some perspective as well.
We're so nice to each other. I have you guys noticed this? This is just something an athlete brought to my attention a few months ago, and I've been noticing it now because I can't unnotice it. Assuming you pair your technology with an external heart rate monitor, right? If you rely on your watch, you can plug your ears. How if you run a Garmin, and of course you upload your Garmin to Strava or whatever device you use, but Garmin, if I go and let's say I rip 400 meter repeats where I'm who gives a crap what my body's doing? I'm running hard, right? And then I go do the same thing and I upload it to Garmin and it goes to Strava. Garmin heavily weights VO2 max work way stronger on the output scale than Strava. Like Strava will be like, nice job, plus 31 relative effort. And Garmin will be like, you killed it, 3 million effort level for this session. And then Garmin underweights, like if I go put like a chill long run where Strava may, like threshold Strava puts a ton of emphasis in. Garmin's like, did you run hard and did you stop? And then did you run hard again and did you stop? Have you guys noticed that? It's like so polar different in what they view as output and work and damage. Pay attention if you run a Garmin. I don't know if you do, Ian. I know you might now, Brakken, but it's like
I've switched to Koros last winter, so I haven't been on Garmin.
Astronomically different.
And
which is interesting. So even like Kingpin technology.
It depends on how they're defining those. It depends on what they're using for like your thresholds, as well as if they're looking at pace. But I do agree. I have noticed very interesting things with Garmin. The amount of rest you take between intervals drastically changes the Garmin output. And it's very interesting. You'll have like a high stress score for the workout, and you can look at your stress score after the fact and be like, oh, my stress score got lowered because I took rest. And that seems slightly counterintuitive to like overall load of the workout.
Yeah, it's just very interesting that even the technology, if we're talking output and people are like, oh, I'm curious, I'm going to go look at what my watch says or what Strava says, my output for the week. Like I can have a score of 500 on Strava and 300 on Garmin. Let's say they're calibrated the same. And I did the same exact work. It's just like very interesting how some technology weights different type of efforts. That's all. I just want to throw that in there, see if you guys have noticed that.
Yeah. And I actually don't know how Strava, what algorithm they use, because I have heavily researched Garmin's infrastructure. And I make sure all of my zones are accurate whenever I'm doing it, because I like having the watch tell me good data as opposed to just being like, oh yeah, you're super slow, or like you're the fastest you've ever been and you just ran like a 30-minute 5K.
I thought Strava was sharing backend with Training Peaks. I thought it was based on Friel, and who in turn was based off, is it Kagan?
Yeah.
I thought they used very similar, like the same base formulas.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. I mean, there are, what is it?
But I don't know who Garmin uses. I don't know where they're getting theirs from.
They're using First Beat for some of their stuff for recovery, as well as they have the standard model of stress response. So it might be heart rate reserve or percentage of lactate threshold, and their system changes based on which threshold or training zones you implement, because they have like percent of max heart rate, they have lactate threshold that you can do your own stuff, and I know that shifts. It wouldn't surprise me if Training Peaks has something similar, but I'm not sure if they weight pace more or heart rate more, or it depends on what inputs you have for metrics.
May I ask something, Ian? Curious how you look at this. I'm gonna. And then let's put a bow tie on this, and then I think we should try to move through these. Like, let's start picking some off, because we're at 2 and we're an hour in. And I do enjoy this. My question for you is: you're a big, you advertise yourself as heart rate based training. Let's say, just a generality. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah.
Okay. So when it comes to structural damage, and the argument you may be making with what I had said would be like, if you go race a 5K or run a 6-mile zone 2 run, you're going to take much more damage from the 5K as far as output goes than the 6-mile run. So Kirk, how are you saying a shorter quality long run is easier than a traditional long run? That's your argument, which is a valid argument. What I'm asking you is, where does structural damage fall into this equation for you? Meaning, I could go run down a mountain we don't have access to, but you do, and I am zone 1, zone 2, I am chilling, but I am taking a pounding. A lot of times there's these X factors. I ran in the snow and was slipping, and my hamstrings are screwed tomorrow, even though my heart rate stayed low. Because you're heart rate based, my question for you is, if that's the rock that you die on, or at least the nucleus for you, how do you factor in structural damage to prescription? Strength training, descending, technical terrain, anything like that? I just actually genuinely curious, because it has to be factored in as well. And your output score may be no different, but you took so much damage because of structure. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So, I mean,
you get what I'm asking.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I had a new client onboarding yesterday, but is that a high five?
Oh, sorry. No, it's a camera indicator.
Yeah, I understand.
No, it was a regime thing. It's like a cult I'm in. It's fine. Move on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kirk's in a cult. Got it.
Yep.
There's the intangibles. Like, this falls into the stuff I can't get from data. Well, I can look like, oh, they maybe ran down a mountain, but maybe they've been running down mountains all summer, so it's not a big deal, versus like the first workout of the year. This is the conversation, and this is more on, yes, I'm super metric driven and data driven, but the athletes have to tell me what's going on. Like, they need to say, oh, my quads are wrecked from this, or like, I ran in snow for 40 minutes and my hip flexors and stabilizers are torched, and we're not going to do, like, I shouldn't do any dynamic stuff. that is arguably the most important piece of when working with a coach is the communication aspect and the athlete telling you what is going on when you maybe can't see it from the data.
I could not echo that sentiment anymore. I was just curious. I mean, that answer is exactly what I would hope for.
Talk with your coach. If you have a coach, tell them things.
I remember when Johnny Luna Lima busted into the scene in Big Bear in 2019, where he smashed the field. We will talk it. And we had gone for a shakeout run the day before, me and Johnny and Tyler. And I'm sucking wind at whatever it is, 7,000 feet, whatever it was. And they're, of course, casual. And at the end of it, Johnny does some hill sprints. I'm taking like 200 to 300 meters. He does like these extended strides. This is the day before the race. And then he turns around and runs faster downhill than I've ever seen anybody do it. And I'm like, that is the dumbest thing anybody could do today. He's going to shit the bed tomorrow. And then he goes up casually and does it again. And I'm looking, I'm like, I'm not doing that. I got to save myself for tomorrow. Then the result happens the next day. And then I'm like, well, there's the difference right there. The dude does this every day or all day. This is chump change for him. Whereas if I did that at that effort, I may lose that card tomorrow, where he was just sharpening the pointy end of his stick. Just very interesting, saying what the athlete is acclimated to and not. You're absolutely right. And so it's so nuanced, because the one thing that Johnny used to make him feel confident in the race tomorrow was the exact thing that if I did, my hips might have been messed up.
I was coaching Johnny at that time.
In fact, that's the day I didn't catch you, but I did come rolling down that hill, I think. I don't think
you didn't catch me, but we were screaming down that. It was a fun race. Yeah,
that was a fun race. Anyways, that's just a sort of a story I remember about stimulus, structural damage, how it would affect people. Should we move to the next one?
Yeah. Oh, and a plug for my business is I was coaching Johnny that day.
Oh, we're gonna edit that part out. Yeah, that part's getting edited out. We have the power to do that.
Yeah. Sure, we can move along. I think this is for Brakken. Oh, actually, we can jump into this one because I don't even know what this is for, but it may have been you guys plugging a new running program or something. And it was like a 3 to 6 week block, and you will have the best race result ever, no matter what you're doing. And
we said that's exactly what we preach all the time. Yeah.
It must have been taken out of context, because I heard that and I was like, you guys have to be joking. And Brakken, you were like, yeah, you don't need a 8-week block for 8-week training block for a 5K and a 16-week block for marathoning. And I don't know if it was facetious or not, and your guys' media guy just messing with everyone, or if you were trying to sell something. But
do you remember this, Kirk?
This is like one of the last ones I saw. It was like June or July.
I can imagine about 3 different ways we got to saying that and why we would have, but I don't know which one it would have been. Because half of what we say, at least me, is tongue in cheek sometimes, and then sometimes it's literal.
Yeah.
But you said it, so go ahead.
If I'm recalling this correctly, we did an episode called basically always be ready. We did a series of how to race your best blank. Mm-hmm. So how to race your best mile, how to race your best marathon, how to race your best 50K. And then the final one was how to race your best everything, which is obviously
this is it. This is the one.
So it was a be ready for as many things as possible training style, so that you're never more than 3 to 6 weeks away from pivoting and sharpening to something.
Mm-hmm. Understood. Okay. The whole
I would never in my life claim the opposite.
Okay. It was like 3 to 6 weeks. You can do whatever you want. And I was like, guys, this is and you said like ultra or marathoning. And I was like, what? Yeah. I know these guys are smarter than this.
Well, you don't.
I think what we had basically decided on is somewhere in build 60-minute to 90-minute fitness-ish, right? Like get ready to race somewhere between like 10 miles and a half or something. I can't remember what we decided, just to simple it, right? Like bullet point it. And then at least you have the option to offshoot in multiple directions if we have that middle ground covered. Was sort of like the sentiment, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it was keeping the long run or long mountain damage, so to speak, of ultra training and the minimum effective dose of mile training and a huge emphasis on aerobic capacity and lactate threshold training so that you're never more than like 3 to 6 weeks
Okay,
away.
so a normal training, and then shift your training to
Yes.
whatever race you're doing.
Right,
Okay.
but how do you keep the smallest amount of ultra long runs and mile speed in there?
But that is that's semantics, and it's like do normal training, and then when a race shows up, you can shift.
Correct. But the episode was about how do you do your normal training
Yeah.
with just enough skill in there? Because there are some people who do mile or 800 or 400, accelerations, or they'll run like fly 40s every week because that's what they've been brought up to do. And there are other people who won't run faster than threshold pace for an
Yeah.
entire block.
Yeah.
And so it was like,
Mhm.
what is holistic training? Normal training that keeps you ready to pivot.
Great. Cool.
Ian, if you were a real friend, you would listen to the episodes and know what we meant.
Guys, I really enjoy both of you, but I got other stuff going on.
Okay.
I don't listen to running podcasts. I
Neither
will
do
say
I.
this.
Okay,
That clip is exactly what you expect out of an Instagram running coach.
Yeah.
I can guarantee in 3 to 6 weeks you can run your best
Yes,
marathon.
and this is why I saw it, and I was like, "Oh God, guys, we really need to talk about this." But
Right.
I'm happy for the clarity, and especially given your social media guide took it out of context, so very important. Cool.
At that point, we were actually picking the timestamps for him to use, and we still do at times. Sometimes he picks, sometimes we do. So we very well could have been like, that point was awesome. Use that. But if it's out of context, it's all null and void.
You guys are just Instagram running coaches, so what can I say?
That's right.
I'm just an influencer at this point.
I mean, you have a shoe rack behind you that the shoes are facing different directions. You got like a whole mic set up. Yeah, you're
He's
just
got
an
a
influencer
shoe
podcaster.
halo around him. It's nice.
You do need one up top pointing towards you, like a mohawk Brakken.
Yeah. The problem is when we do race brain, it's vertical alignment. And so this was the only one that addressed both camera styles we use.
Understood.
There was a lot of blueprinting before this got done.
It looks great. I got piano, so it's fine.
Uh-huh.
Let's see. I mean, there's plenty more, but form optimization. Brakken, I think you said and this is kind of around the same time period we're talking about, you are a form optimizer, not a form restructurer.
Yeah, I don't do form overhaul. I do form optimization.
Cool. What about if they have a long history of tibial stress fractures? Or
Then they go to
patellar-
someone better qualified than me.
Okay. That's fine. That's an answer. That would answer.
There are people that need to learn how to run because they learned inappropriately.
Okay.
Most people don't. And if you need it, I'm not your guy.
Okay. That answers the question, because I was going to say, like, sometimes people do need to have their form shifted if they have mostly injuries. Like, that's where you'll see it. And that's really the only reason you would need to see it. But that was not brought up in the clip. So, again,
when we were
super efficiently. Great answer.
When we were talking about this is one. I got a couple messages from Rich Diaz about this. Who I'm a big Rich fan. I'm a good old boy fan. You're a good old boy. I like you, right? And anyways, he
not me. I want to burn the establishment down.
Rich is a good old boy.
I'm with Brakken. The establishment has harmed many people, mostly female athletes, for generations, and I absolutely
Kirk stands with them.
Yes, Kirk. Yeah, I mean, he joined.
I don't know what corner you are shoving me into right now. What I'm getting at is, so we had this was part of our, like, we brought in cadence was a big part of this conversation. And I was like, I'm going to stand on the 180 is not the holy grail rock. And then we started talking about.
I will say, Kirk,
Mm-hmm.
I watched the cadence clip and
Okay.
your discussion of it. I almost brought it in here as like a gold star for you.
Oh my goodness.
I was so happy about it, because cadence is such a pivotal point, especially with older running coaches who say it's like the golden standard.
Yes,
but you're
okay,
not
well, thank
a
you.
5'6" Ethiopian running 440 around a track.
Well, and I'll tell you what, after saying that, Rich and I had a little bit of spirited banter, but it died, afterwards. But I did have a number of, of his disciples come to his defense. I don't know how many messages I got like about, that it helped them be healthy or whatever. And I think mostly it's because they needed to increase their cadence. That was the bottom line. They probably were overstriding and high ground content and all of that. But nonetheless, I didn't know if there was a point of discussion there with you or not, but it sounds like we're cool. So leave it.
Oh, you did great with cadence. I agree, but like overall, usually going back to the original comment, if you are seeing injuries with runners or they have injury history, sometimes they do need major form readjustment if they are overstriding, and that's the biggest factor.
I think Rich Ryan went through that, didn't he? You would say form overhaul from what he did pre-OCR and then hybrid, didn't he? We have to ask Rich about that. If he did a whole form overhaul. I know he worked on it pretty mightily. I just don't know to what extent.
I will double down a little bit on the platform you thought I was taking, which is I think it's overprescribed. I think that it's like telling people their glutes aren't firing. It's an easy place to show people that, to make them uncomfortable and establish your dominance and intelligence and be like, I know this thing that you don't. And if you don't do this, you're going to, and then people are like, all right, I'll pay you whatever. I think it's overdone. And I don't like predatory style anything, but there is a place for it. And if you are in that place, you need it like now.
Brakken, I couldn't agree more. I mean, Mary Kane is the best example almost out of anyone.
Right.
Went to Alberto, was like, oh, you run funny. You're fast as shit, but I'm going to fix that.
Here's a horse harness.
Yeah, horse harness shatters the poor girl, and then she has to go from there. But yeah, I agree. You don't always need it. And if you're not getting injured and you run, you're like decently, like you're not running to where you're overstriding constantly, even if you don't get injuries. You don't need it. There are small tweaks to be optimized. I went for a run with a friend around here who's just getting into it, and we just talked about hip placement, forward lean, driving with hips. And it wasn't like I completely overhauled his running. I said, move your hips forward an inch. And he was like, oh, this is fantastic. But it's not like I said, you have to up your cadence to 180, do glute bridges for 60 minutes a day.
The only form cue you need to go back and you need to watch Without Limits. And you got to watch Steve Prefontaine running with his butt sticking out. And you remember coach calls him over and says, you always run with your butt sticking out like that? And what does the coach say to him? It's inappropriate. You don't know this?
I don't.
Donald Sutherland, you old dog.
It's okay. So can I say it on this podcast?
Go for it, Kirk.
Shoot, what's going on in your house, Ian?
Dogs, let me go check and make. You guys talk about that. I'll be right back.
I don't need to.
We can move on, but just that cue is the cue that
Move
sticks
your hips
with me.
forward.
Tuck your hips up under you.
Yeah.
And that actually helps me to think about that when I run, is to push my hips forward. Anyways, we'll leave the actual quote out of it. Go watch Without Limits.
Well, as we wrap up this topic, it's important to remember that everyone had something work for them. And so there's always going to be the diehards that are like, 180 fixed me. Like, great. That's fantastic.
I
Like,
would disagree with that so heavily. It wasn't 180 that fixed them.
Right, but you're great work. But don't put it on everyone else.
And we'll just sit here. I would love that. You guys are
Ian and Rich, and we're just moderators.
No,
we just exist.
I refuse to do that.
Oh, it'd be so entertaining.
I refuse to do that.
Next thing.
Oh goodness. Oh, we'll start with something way back. The first thing I wrote down. Kirk, this could be taken out of context as well.
Seems to be a theme here.
Well, I mean, I'm just prefacing it because I'm going off Instagram clips, guys. It was when to bail, so like early in the year. And one of the things you said there was two things where you won't be able to accomplish the purpose of the workout, or it will set you back in training. And I believe that's very situational. And I don't know what other preface there was, because if you're going into a taper and you're pretty darn wrecked unless there's a severe risk of injury. You're not going to hit paces because you're fried and your legs are toast. Still go do the workout because we want that stimulus leading into XYZ race or event.
I'm trying to do the whole find the clip thing because I recall this, and I want to know the context situation, right?
You
Well, I
remember
don't
this
know the
conversation?
context.
You remember the episode?
Roughly, but this was like beginning of the year, so almost like 12 months ago.
Okay.
Type
Yeah.
We were talking
Yeah.
about why sometimes it is like we don't advocate skipping workouts or quitting them, but there are times where like there are excuses and there are facts. And sometimes the facts say you need to not finish this workout. And we gave reasons why you might want to pull the plug from time to time.
Got it. So it was situational.
The whole episode was a situational episode.
Okay. I didn't get that. I just got time to bail. But if there's an entire episode talking about different situations and the preface is do the workout unless you're going to like blow your knee, strain a calf, whatever, that's fine. I just wanted to call it out because there are many situations where you might go in and you're like, oh, I feel like hot trash, but it's actually important to do the workout.
Kirk's big quote is the body does as it's told. He wants you running that workout when you feel like hot trash.
It will do what it is
told. That I didn't get that from the clip. So
I'm circling the waters. We did this thing about B workouts, like when to stop B workouts, stringing.
Yeah,
B
I saw
workouts
that
together.
and I was like, I don't even know what that means, nor do I want to dive in. I don't care. So
I wanted to talk about that one where everyone's glorifying the massive workout. And I was like, if you just string together a bunch of 8 out of 10 workouts, you're going to be a monster.
Yeah, 8 out of 10 is awesome.
That's a B. That's a B minus.
Well, okay. Oh, that's where it came from. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Again, if I listen to the episodes, I might actually know context, but sorry, guys.
When to sink your teeth into a workout and when to bail. That was, I think, what it was labeled.
Yes,
I think we both spoke in it. I think I found it. 100% situational. Yes.
Okay.
For sure.
Great.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Fantastic. Although I will say, I think you could almost categorize tendencies. We all know this. We have the athletes who will work themselves to death and don't know any better, right? They chase the ball until they die, right? And so an argument can be made like, you're not hitting your splits, your D's in the dirt, like pull it. There's like a camp there, and then there's the other camp that's like, you're so afraid to put your foot to the flame, you're overcautious. And when you feel icky, you need to push no matter what. There's like, you could almost put people into two camps and then maybe generalize from there, but situational for sure.
Cool. Yeah. And on that note, I think it's kind of a mama bear situation where you want to be in the middle there. You want to listen to your body and understand what's going on, be able to hit hard workouts. But if you know your sleep was trash or you have massive life stress, maybe take your foot off the gas a little bit. Your central nervous system, or as Kirk likes to say, your governor will also do that for you to a certain extent.
We've talked a lot on here about this concept, and I'm interested. This is adjacent to that. I'm interested in your take on that. And we didn't come up with this quote, but we like to live by it to an extent. That the goal in training is to run as fast as possible, as often as possible, with no negative consequences. And that determines when you bail a workout. Like if I can't do this again in 2 or 3 days, getting 70% of it now so I can get 99% of it again in 2 days and 90% in 3 days. Like to me, if people balance that, it doesn't matter which training pace you choose because some people respond more to other things. I have the things I believe are the best, but if you can consistently do it as often as possible, that's probably your best way to get fit.
It's funny you say that. There's different mentalities. If you went from like a purely model-based training program, so you look at like training models that you have stress inputs, you have recovery inputs, whatever. If you can just run as hard as you can every day and not have soft tissue injuries, that gives you the highest output.
That's it.
But we are people. Yes, we are people. And there's a lot of caveats. Like, obviously, you don't want to be doing threshold work the entire time because, like, science shows that's not the best way to do it. But running sub-threshold, like tempo, threshold, whatever you want to call it, as long as you can every day, theoretically would make you the fastest person ever if you did it for your long run for whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that's recovering to 100% every night.
Right.
So in a perfect world where we have maximized recovery and we can just give ourselves an injection and go do a 3-hour threshold workout where there's no breaks and just running 99% of your lactate threshold or anaerobic threshold the entire time, yes, that would be the most optimum you can do from a pure math-based model of the human body.
And that would be your stress score. That would be, if I can get 22 minutes a week at VO2 max or 44 minutes a week at LT2, or I can get 88 minutes a week at 90% of LT2. Like, for some people, that's enough. How often can I move and recover? And in that case, in that model, you bail on a workout every single time in order to get to the next one.
Yes.
And in a different model, you execute every workout and you don't return to it until you're ready.
Yeah. And it depends on theory, depends on model, depends on the athlete. Like, there's that. What we were discussing for all of those listeners out there is a hypothetical bubble that does not exist. Do not do it. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so all I was saying is that by that theory, there could be an athlete that bails on almost every single workout in order to get back to it as quickly as possible.
Yes, that's, I would argue, not doing a very good job with recovery, or their workouts are too big.
Or I certainly would worry about what happens when it starts to hurt mid-race. What do they do then?
Or just bail.
They just bail.
The
they
next
just
race.
pull off.
The next race.
The next race. And they get 3 quarters through that one.
Then you make an Instagram post.
And then we have a conversation about it.
I love running 18 miles of the marathon and quitting. It's my favorite.
Yeah. Well, I mean, 18 is when it starts to hurt. So, you know, just get out.
Get out. No tongue in cheek here, ever.
No. That's the clip today. It'll just be run 18 miles and quit. That'll be today's clip.
Yeah. String together a bunch of B marathons.
Yeah.
That's it.
I think that might be everything, guys, for that I had from the first 6 months.
It's good.
It's not so bad.
But I was hoping for some philosophical fights.
I think we did get that to a certain extent. Like, not true philosophical, but like we got definitions and different mentalities of.
I wanted us to clash over 180 beats per minute, but about training, like something like that, where we actually don't believe the same.
Let's talk about this. Let's see if we maybe
you guys mostly say smart things. Like I said, the vast majority of things you say is awesome. So
you're not here to give compliments, Ian.
No, I want to be a dog.
I just spent the last hour and a half attacking you both, so I got to let people know that I don't actually feel that way the majority of the time.
He took the goal is to run as fast as possible, as often as possible. That was Jakob Ingebrigtsen in one or many of his interviews when he talked about wearing his super shoes. Right? Why would I not wear my super shoes? I mean, it was a thing. He's if you're not fast, what are you doing? Right? Run as fast as possible. The other side of and then you added on to the end of that, Brakken, as long as you maintain availability, right? And you whatever we say.
Right.
I'm just curious then, let's put our coach's hat on. So, for example, from what we understand about, let's just say Jakob, because that quote came up, that he runs very much within himself. Of course, they do blood lactate monitoring constantly and whatever, but for the majority, he's not going to the well in training most of the time. And then as we understand it, yes, he does some big, like, you're not pulling the plug. It's not a B workout. I'm seeing this thing through as racing gets closer, and then using races as stimulus to reach your true ceiling, but not dropping the hammer every quality, in quote, session.
Almost ever.
Ever. Him. So Jakob rarely, if ever, does that, always within himself and is held back, right? And this is what that we've gathered through interviews and maybe understanding the coaching method. My question to you guys, just worth the discussion, is do you believe you can race your best if you race like a track circuit every week, Diamond League or whatever, by simply holding back all the time and only shooting your shots in races? Or is that so non-applicable to like our common listener that you must swing sometimes in training and suck it up and not pull the plug? So I'm asking, can you hold back all the time and see your best race results? Or is that an impossibility? Jakob is a freak, and it's because he races every week once the season gets underway. What do you guys think?
I mean, I think Brakken and I have the same answer, but I would be curious to hear what he says.
You want me to go first?
Yeah.
And I have thoughts on this too, of course, but
I think the more metronome your stride requirement is for the event, like the track, the less you have to race to be able to nail it, because it's a mathematical function. You know what you can run. You practice that stride, you practice that pace, you follow the wave light. I don't think you have to do it very often. The more your stride has to change during, the longer the event is, the more there is up or down or anything else, the more you have to feel those things, in my opinion.
would you argue that post-Olympics, fourth in the 1,500 meter, wins the 5K and makes a mockery of the field 4 days later, and then goes and shats the bed in a half marathon like a day or two later? Would that be a classic example of there were turns and wind and hills, or is it systemic fatigue? Like, is that what you're outlining?
Kind of, yeah.
Sure.
I also think that he's maybe genetically designed to run 5K, 10K. But yeah, I'm interested to hear Ian's, but I think that you can replicate a track race in training very, very, very well without having to do crazy intensity. It is really hard to nail the last, let's say, 15K of a 50K without doing some racing or some really big, nasty days at some point. Can you win a 50K off just being fitter than everyone else? Yeah. But you know what's going to happen the last 300 of a 1500 without having raced one. You pretty much know. You don't know what's going to happen the last 10K of a marathon without some race experience, even in adjacent distances.
I agree with what Bracken's saying. That wasn't going to be what I was going to say. So
Okay.
That's great that he has a different.
And I have a slightly
but I
different
agree with that.
I have a yes and to that.
Yeah. Well, from my perspective, is he's getting that experience. If he's racing once a week in the 15, like
Right.
that's
Exactly.
not getting that is getting that experience. Doesn't matter if it's, you can look at it as an actual race in Diamond League, or you can look at it, it's a training session for him. Like, it fits both of them. So you could argue he's probably getting more experience than almost everyone else by racing that much. Whether or not I agree with that race frequency is different, especially since the 15 is such a gnarly race on your nervous system. Depending on how it plays out. Like, if it's going for like speed versus just like the last 600. But
he never runs slow.
And he doesn't run slow.
It comes due at some point, right? It always comes due.
Every week was a generalization, but during peak,
he races more than anyone else.
Oh, he races a ton,
Yeah,
but like
right.
he doesn't. If he's doing that though, so this is kind of a different spectrum. But back in the day, there was an adventure racer who would do like almost expedition or like multi-hour adventure races every weekend, and then just like zone 2. I mean, this is much more on like the ultra side of things, but that would be how he got his training, was doing those long events at higher intensity than you'd probably do on your own. And Jakob's doing a similar thing, maybe not as frequent as like once a week, but he's still getting he's still understanding what that race pace feels like and still getting that intensity.
I'm trying to apply this to like a segment of our listeners who, let's say, race once a month the majority of the year, and it's the reindeer run, but then it's the SoCal Super, and then it's the next month it is the Jacksonville Sprint, but then they have a marathon in April, right? Like, it's roll your eyes, but it's what we deal with, right?
I'm not rolling my eyes. I think that sounds like a fun schedule for like a recreational or age group runner.
So somebody like that, I'm saying, when it comes to just going to the well and sucking it up, is it more important for the age group competitive athlete to not shy away? Or can they do the B workouts constantly and still see their best racing? I think is the real question I'm getting at now that we're splitting the hairs on it. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think it's what Brakken said earlier. It's like it depends on the distance. Like most people can go out and you say go run a mile. They'll probably go out way too fast, but it's going to hurt the entire time, like for the most part. And then they'll draw back into threshold area and then they'll finish at threshold. They'll just be forced there. You say go run a marathon and they do the same exact race tactic but blow up at mile 12 because they haven't eaten anything or they're not trained for it or whatever. I think it very much depends on the race distance and having the conversations with athletes on like racing strategy, training leading into it, fueling, hydration, all the other things that come into play with longer events. Because most people, you can say go run as hard as you can and they'll go do that. That's this standard model for training outside of working with coaches or understanding endurance athletics. They'll go out for 20 to 30 minutes as hard as they can 3 times a week, and they are dying.
When I had my yes and, I was sort of going to, and this could be a snippet you could take and then argue against. This would be a classic clip statement. Would be like fitness. If you are fitter than everybody else, the longer and more varied the race, like your fitness will show through and you will end up on top no matter the circumstance. Whereas nailing a 1500 is threading the needle. And so, I mean, really, right? More so than a 90-minute trail race in hailstorm or something. The Boston Marathon X amount of years ago in the rain. So I actually feel like I need to get really familiar with that last 300, or like those are the ones I can't bail on. Maybe I wouldn't have felt that way when I was younger, but now
we're talking about like age group and recreational athletes.
At this point, sure, yes.
But that is, I think, where the distinction lies. And yes,
fair.
if you have a D1 college athlete or like collegiate athletes for semi-pros, that would be where it would come into play, or with pros as well, where I think that's a different conversation than the general public.
I think a lot of...
Oh, go ahead.
Well, no, I think about the people we work with. Between the running public training plans, our one-on-one coaching, there are hundreds, maybe breaching 1,000 athletes that we have touched, okay?
That's a snippet.
That's a snippet.
No comment. I'm not even getting near that.
What I'm saying is those who seek help out from people like us want to be often coached, treated, the mentality of a pro athlete. They just don't have that ability. So entertaining the pro athlete side of the conversation, I think most find more intriguing and try to apply it to themselves in many circumstances versus, I'm an age group athlete. I wanted to stand on the podium at my local Spartan race. Of course they do. But I think the ones who listen, the ones who hire us, the ones who show up still want to, like, I'm a pro, right? I want to train and do my best to see my best potential. So I find our listeners lean towards that. Like, no, I want to know, like, threading the needle and what Jakob is doing, because I want to take a version of that for myself. So sometimes I try to like get to that point in the conversations, and it might not be necessary, but I know everybody thinks they're the tiger in the room. Most people do, and they want to train as such, I will say.
Yeah, and so that's a great point, though, and I actually agree with you. Like a lot of the conversations I have when it comes with, and this goes back to the very first topic about race strategy or whatever, that's when you can boil it down to mindset. And the mindset for a professional athlete is the same in terms of like race strategy and how to unlock your potential and showcase your fitness and gains on race day is the same as age group, recreational runner, couch to 5K, whatever. It's like you find the flow state, you find what works for you. Everyone's different. I mean, Hunter is a great example of racing under pressure, whereas he feels most comfortable and relaxed in like a high pressure scenario. And that's where he showcases often. Most people crack, or like they get caught up with competitors and what they're doing. They let the race control them instead of them controlling their own race.
Yeah. And I would say the big difference between pros and age groupers is that pros know how to race, and age groupers get way too much bad race experience and not enough good race experience. The people that race all the time are never truly racing, and the people that don't race often don't have like a million quiver or a million arrows in their quiver. And from that perspective alone, I think that a really valuable way would be, no, let's never swing big in training. Let's never time trial. If you want to go hard, you have to go race somewhere. And we're just going to always do super measurable training sessions. And then if you're going to go hard, it has to be paired with learning how to race in a new situation. And find some places where you are in it for the win this weekend. Like there's no one showing up. You're the leader. And now another weekend, hey, you got into one where you had to hang on the second pack. And now one where you were in a pack of 50. And the pro athletes have grown up racing every single race under the sun. By the time they get to the pro, they middle school, high school, college, or overseas. So many of the people that we work with just really don't know how to race yet. They don't know how to find that, as you call it, flow state.
Yeah. But also with that same scenario, pro athletes still fall into the traps that everyone else does. Like I've done that in the past 4 years or whatever. Like you go out, you know how to race, you get caught up in whatever it is. Abu Dhabi 2022, I think, is a great example for me.
Didn't you sit on a sand dune and have a good cry at some point?
I don't know if Leon and I cried, but yes, I sat the final sand dune of and it was just a massive, like 150 meter tall sand dune. Sat up there with Leon, just like completely out of touch with even remotely a good finish, because I went out too hard, blew up, and overheated. And then
for a visual, did you guys actually sit on your butts and sit there and be like, well?
Oh yeah, we literally sat down like the race was over for us. Like
that's just a great visual. That's all. I just love the idea of a world championship race and Ian's just sitting in the sandbox. Just be like, it's done.
I mean, it's a pretty cool. I look back on fondness of that moment. The rest of the race was terrible. Like when Nicole and the top 3 women passed me after like they started 20 minutes behind our start time or something. That wasn't a great experience, but it was cool to be in the desert and like overlooking a festival area with fire and whatnot. Yes.
Do you know? I'm gonna just keep interjecting. Do you know my first interaction with you? Do you remember me telling you this?
You don't know. Told me before. Is it Tahoe 2017?
2016, whatever one where you rolled your ankle and were screaming bloody murder.
I think that may have been 2016, 2017. Yeah.
Talk about race experience and not going forward anymore. It was like down near the village area. We had descended. You were well ahead of me, I'm sure, at that point. That was my first year.
I was right with Azar at that point.
And you were, I don't know what you did, but I must have came up somewhere within the vicinity and you'd stopped progressing. What did you do? I just remember a guy really, really injured, and it was it wasn't good.
I did a grade 2 in that race and dropped out at that point.
Somewhere near the bottom of that like first descent or something, right?
Yeah, it was right near the base. So just coming down, wasn't paying attention, stepped on a rock, blew my ankle out.
Couple world champs, some memorable moments.
Yeah, Tahoe. We've got some ups and downs, highs, lows.
That's all. Just want to remember another world champs where the progress stopped. I also remember the following year, you and Albin being shoulder to shoulder, and you had a heck of a race. So you got redemption.
Yeah, that's how, but again, pros have bad races. I didn't know enough back in the day to like do enough ankle prehab or like stability work or whatever, or tape my ankles properly. It's learning experiences that we've raced enough to where we can then help other individuals not make those mistakes, or if they have mistakes and don't know where to go from there, like we can help guide them.
So speaking of ankles taped, I did break my mold and I watched a podcast this week. I watched David Roche talk about Leadville. I was very intrigued because he trained for it. The way he talked about his training is not how I would have trained someone for it. And whenever I hear something that I think I wouldn't have done that, I have to know what and why and all that. And that's actually not the point. We can talk about that if you want, how he did it. But he said, he taped his ankles for the race, double taped them because he went with trail super shoes that were super unstable. And so he taped his ankles.
Well, I would never do that.
Yeah.
That would be my first no. As someone
but
with
along
bad
with
ankles.
that, he said that if you care about your performance and you want to get the most out of your training and you can afford it, you should be in super shoes for every, and I'll use a word that's forbidden, every quality session. Not for performance, but for recovery. So find a pair of super shoes that reduces the amount of damage you feel afterwards, that allows you to recover better from the work so that you can do more work, and be in super shoes on every single quality session. I want your take on that.
So this goes back to something that I've been curious about, or you guys have mentioned. Like, you say recovery session, but you also have like reducing damage in it, but you're trying to get benefit from that session. Like, a recovery session should either be about recovery. My perspective, recovery should either be recovering and fixing things, either your central nervous system or tissue.
What do you mean by recovering in this sense?
So like, either you do a 10-minute silly light spin bike to like increase blood flow, but it's not going to have actual stress on the body, versus going out and doing a 40-minute zone 2 run to get some more aerobic development.
So you're either purely recovering or you are improving aerobically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or some soft tissue development as well, because you are stressing the tissues. You're not recovering the tissues from a zone 2 run. Like, it doesn't work like that.
I suppose a recovery run would be limiting the damage that's building from the day before. So if you were reduced down to from 100 to a 10, and taking the day off would bring you to a 100, and a recovery practice might bring you to 99 or 100, and an easy aerobic run would bring you to 80 or 70. A recovery run would be one that would limit any possible reduction in return to 100 while still having an aerobic benefit. Would be how most people would think about a recovery run, where I'm trying to put my feet in both camps.
But the example you gave, you just said it took it from a 99 to a 70 or 80. That does limit it.
I wasn't even trying to be logical there, but
well, I know, but like, no matter if you're going to recover. Mm-hmm. If you're going to train. And I'm not saying that means intensity. It means, like, if you're going to go out for an aerobic run, understand that aerobic run is going to still have a stress response on your body.
So in light of that, do you agree that you should be in high stack supercritical foam every time you're doing something intense, so that you do not need the recovery afterwards?
Absolutely not. Our bodies have a stress and response system. Like, the whole why you train is to put stress on your body. That is the only reason you train. I mean, yes, it has a lot of other health benefits, whatever. You are training at whatever quality, as many quotes I can do around quality as possible, long runs, aerobic runs, strength training. Every time you're putting load on the body and you're trying to make your body adapt to that load and progressively overload, so then it builds from that over time. If you do a run in, quote, super shoes that is going to limit the load on certain things, as soon as you go away from those super shoes, you're going to have problems. So unless you're planning and running those super shoes for pretty much your entire life, which is feasible. Like if you have money and they work for you and you don't get injured, that's a possibility. But if you don't have $300 to shell out every month on shoes, I would recommend against that.
How often
And
would you
also,
use that?
I would say once a week. And it depends on what you're training for. Like if you're training for a long run, I would say a good portion of your long run do it and then or every other week. Enough to where you know how you feel in them, if they create problems, and also getting the mechanics and pacing down with them as well. So probably minimum once a week, but you don't need to do them all the time. And it's important for your feet to adapt. Like this is more on the naturalistic side, but you look at barefoot individuals or people who don't have a lot of injuries. They're walking around, their feet are moving, the joints are moving. When you just run in one specific shoe and only that shoe, you get into that mechanical pattern. And unless you're wearing that shoe every day in and out, even just your day-to-day walking around shoes is still going to put different stress on the foot. So you may not be ready for when your shoes blow or you need to, there are scenarios, but I think Brakken, one of the videos I saw, variety is the spice of training or something like that.
Variety is not the spice of training.
Oh, it's not. Okay.
Yeah.
In this case, I would say variety is a good thing in footwear sense.
So I've been on board with as many shoes as you can run in as possible. It changes the stress on your feet. If you're not a barefoot runner, you should be in several different drops throughout the week to change that exact thing you're talking about. His point was that if I'm going to put words in his mouth, if I'm going to take away what I think he meant, was that you have your aerobic days and your long runs to develop your resistance to the task at hand. You have your engine building days to get as much quote unquote quality work in as possible. And if you can do 10 to 20% more reps on those engine building days and still get out the next day and do your 90-minute trail run because you wore super shoes, you should do it every time so that your engine building, let's say threshold days, instead of 30 minutes of threshold reps, you're getting 40 minutes in because you're not limited by what you're going to have to do the next day. And then you can still get back and run all your other volume in regular shoes. That could be an optimal. Now, he didn't say could, he said that's how you need to do it. But do you see any truth to that? Or do you still think that you'd be too reliant upon that shoe and it could be a false hope?
I think one piece that would need to be layered over on top, if you were to like make that like the end all be all statement, would be you still need to be stressing tendons, ligaments, and tissue in a manner. And that can be done through plyometrics, strength training. If you're wearing a super shoe to essentially limit that, which is what it sounds like he's doing, so he can maximize his cardiovascular and respiratory gains from that specific session, or maximize that session for that, and you're doing that to limit tissue damage, then you need to make sure you're getting that tissue work in other scenarios. And if you're doing it to limit, I guess, I don't see how this would be the case because you're actually increasing overall load on the central nervous system. Like if you're doing it to limit central nervous system fatigue and like cardiovascular and those type of physiological adaptations, I don't think you should do that. Like the whole point of,
I can't imagine that would be.
Yeah, I don't, and again, I don't know, but if it's tissue, you definitely need to still be stressing those tissues, which is why everyone on this show is a proponent of strength training along with your running.
What about you, Kirk? How often should you be in super shoes if you want to, again, live that pro life, wring every ounce out of your training?
I think I could stand on either side of that coin and justify it in a way that would maybe be convincing. Unlimited resources, life of the pro. If it means you run another 90 minutes per week because you're more available and super shoes you got racks of them, go nuts. If your butt's ever going to go descending on a trail or run a hilly marathon that you need to acclimate to damage or some other potential stressor in a race, it's not the way to go. But if you're in a vacuum on the roads in controlled environment, I guess you could argue, why wouldn't you want 90 more minutes of running a week and feeling the same amount of fatigue with more systemic work? So, sure, if you're a road runner with unlimited resources, I think there could be justification for it. I wouldn't do it.
I really struggle with how like that's going to allow you to run 90 more minutes.
That was just a throwaway.
No, not 90, but like whatever, like how it's going to significantly increase volume. It just because of the nervous system side of things, like that, it's still going to be the same. Like you have those two limiters, you have tissue and nervous system, and like you're still fatiguing your nervous system.
Fellas, real quick, I need to step out to help my wife with something before she leaves. Are you guys going to keep rolling or should we wrap this thing? Because I'll probably be out for like 5 minutes and then I can step back in.
Step back in.
Okay.
I've got time.
All right, cool.
So I believe that there is a body type for this. I think that David Roach and let's say Connor Mance and people like that are the ones who seem to be the ones talking about this. And the commonality there is that they're inherently very forefoot strikers. And a super shoe makes you run a certain way in it. So for myself, I cannot do as many reps, let's say 1,000-meter threshold reps. I can't do as many in, let's say, the Alpha Fly as I could do in the Speed Goat. I could do more reps in the Speed Goat. I'd be a little slower, but I could do 12 or 14 in there where my calves or Achilles would not want to accept it.
So glad you said that, Brakken.
However, David Roach is a forefoot striker. He's already going to run that way. This is actually probably going to de-stress his rear chain because there's more foam underneath where he's landing. And he, instead of stabbing the track, is stabbing foam. I never stab the track ever. So I think there is a person, I agree with his statement with qualifications. I think if it's an engine work day and muscle damage or soreness or something is your limiter, if you can remove that, that's only going to help you. Like if you can move 10%.
Yeah, but this is also like, if I remember correctly, David and Megan also have like quite an extensive injury history. So like he
talked about it. It's made his calves worse. He said he's had more calf strains in that Leadville buildup since starting to run in the Adidas Agravit Terex Speed Ultra Pro than he ever has in his life. Well, so that's the consequence of it.
That seems terrible.
He also is more fit than he's ever been, and he set the Leadville course record. So when you're playing with fire, you're going to get burned.
Yeah, I understand that concept, but is he's more fit has ever been because he did those workouts and then was forced to recover and cross train?
I don't know. Again, I think that there are columns to use it in. I think that if you're going to run on the track anyway, or like a bike path, sure.
Yeah.
But you better be doing your hill reps in something a little more minimal.
Yes. I mean, even hill reps is okay, but like
whatever you're going to use in the race, you need to be ready for.
Yo, yeah. And that's why I said, like, if you're going to race in it, you should be training.
But I would hurt myself. My calf and Achilles would have issues if I ran 3 times per week.
Yeah, it takes a lot of, I remember when I was first starting out with those and like I felt my calves, like this puts so much load on them. It puts you into more of a forefoot strike. Like I'm a midfoot striker and it just rocks you on that front and rolls you off, which is great for efficiency, especially with like the built-in rocker to a certain extent and the force return properties. But with that context of having even more calf strains, there's too much to unpack with, and like we can't create a blanket statement for this example of like David crushing Leadville? Was it because he got calf strains and then had to cross train and that was more recovery, and it actually was the cross training that put him in such a good state because he was running less?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what he did for those, but it was an interesting statement of if you want to, you must. And blanket statements, are always tricky, but there is some truth to it that if you could wring more minutes spent in zones with no associated cost, but then why aren't we seeing alter Gs for threshold work?
Yeah.
And you could do 70 minutes of threshold. You could then train to your systemic stress level rather than
that changes throughout the year. Like me personally, I know like I shift between tissue being my limiter or nervous system being my limiter, and that just depends on kind of where I'm at in the season, if I'm doing like a more aggressive ramp or whatever. And almost always, if I do like aggressive ramps, I know it's my tissue that shows up and creates problems, and I get tendonitis, either Achilles, patellar, quadricep, whatever. Those are my favorite things. But late season, when I've been training up and down mountains and I'm at high volume, I know it's my nervous system, and like I'm fatigued, I'm cranky. Some of the really high paces are hard to hit. All the things that come along with that being the limiting factor.
So then the follow-up question to that is, where would you personally, not in theory, because I think the theory is easy to say, but where would you personally stop using super shoe and start using something else? Where's your line for terrain or distance or speed? Where would you not reach for one for a race?
For a race?
Yeah. Because the theory is easy. It's whenever it's the benefits don't outweigh the costs.
Yeah. Right? I mean, it really would be looking at the terrain would be my biggest thing.
Like he went Leadville 100.
Yeah, I would never do that.
Right.
I mean, Leadville, I actually am unfamiliar with how technical that race is in terms of...
The middle is. Now, I would swap. He didn't swap shoes. He wore the same shoe and sock the entire time.
I would have swapped. Like
I would have swapped.
Any sort of technical terrain, I will not run a super shoe in. Because I have bad ankles and have, as Kirk pointed out earlier, rolled my ankle in a very high profile race when I was in a good position. That's not something I'm interested in. Even taping, I wouldn't feel comfortable with that. I don't necessarily go beyond like 26 mils of like maybe high 20s sometimes, but I really don't like going beyond that on stack height. I just get uncomfortable. I lose ground contact feel. It feels unstable. That's my personal. But if I'm running a road race or a track or whatever, and it's just straight and flat, I'm all for it. I know the economical benefits of super shoes.
What do you go for? Like I respond to different shoes than Kirk does. What's your go-to right now if you had to run your fastest 5K, let's say?
Alpha Fly.
Alpha.
Mm-hmm.
Same.
I've said this for years, but I was one of the first people testing those shoes. Like I got to running them in the secret lab. It was fantastic. When I put on the Alpha Flies, I told them straight up, like, these are cheating. This feels like cheating. So, and that's how I felt.
Looking at of what the audience would understand. So Spartan courses.
Do not wear a super shoe in a Spartan course.
Which one would you, if you like San Luis Obispo, would you consider?
Anything that has like a major sharp turn while descending, you should not wear a super shoe. And I don't think I've ever been in a Spartan course that didn't have either mud or like a hard turn in it.
So if you had to...
At speed.
Let's say like San Luis Obispo, and you have, how many sharp, steep turns do you think, on course?
I haven't run slow.
Oh, you have?
I went to school in San Luis Obispo, so I know the terrain fairly well.
Let's say that there's 4 on that course, where you should not be in a super shoe on this, and you have to chop your steps, come to a stop, turn, and then resume running. How much flat ground running would you need to cancel out that negative.
We are getting in semantics, Brakken. I am not. I don't even.
Right. So I'm saying like in a 5K, in a sprint, you would never do it. In a beast, would you consider it in an OCR course ever?
In a
Or
beast,
you're just
I might consider it, but like it is so course dependent and technical terrain. We've got on super shoes.
Kirk, would you ever wear a super
Shocking.
shoe for a Spartan race?
I know that was trying to get off of it.
Is there a
Yeah.
single course you would?
San Luis Obispo, super. You can justify it.
That's the course we were just talking about.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
There's some Arizona courses. I think you could I wore my Nike Vaporfly for a 15.5-mile trail race with 2,300 feet of gain. And I thought I may have performed as well or better in it because it was firm, packed, and flat, a lot of it. So I think you could in an OCR. I mean, what did you guys come to? What was your consensus?
Maybe depending on course terrain.
I have only run.
Do you consider a Tecton X a super shoe? Because I have athletes that race Spartan Beast and a Tecton X, technically a super shoe.
Yeah, mostly it's more stack height and instability related.
Yeah.
So
I think I have only run one course maybe that I would say I could wear a super shoe on this and be better.
Ian, did you race at the first North American OCR championships down in Texas outside of Austin?
No, I missed that one.
That would have been a sweet one for it, by the way. You could have
justified Let's move on from super shoes. I know it.
Well, we've already been going for 2 hours. I mean, can we just move on from this whole thing?
I think we can wrap it up. I will come back with more things to bother you guys about.
So I do want to put out a call to action on this because, like I said, I had that conversation with someone the other day and I realized they've been training under the principles that I did not mean to tell them to train under. And I know there's stuff out there that people have always, you've heard something and thought, that can't be right. Or I just don't really agree with that. Or that they've said the opposite of that. So if you are sitting at home and you have had that moment, tell us what those are, and Kirk and I will do a Q&A clearing up or justifying what you did or didn't hear. Because I'm now curious how many times we've said something that the context or actually what we said has misled you or you've always just wondered about.
Or send it to me and I'll beat it over their heads too, because I think that's more entertaining. So yeah, no, that's great. And it is always hard to know what that is, but if it just doesn't sound right, fire away. Because oftentimes, like Brakken said, this individual was under this idea and it wasn't correct. They didn't even know it. So if you have questions or you Google it and it says this is ridiculous, send it in.
Google, what is a quality session? What does it say?
I'm going to do that right now. What is a quality running session?
Well, what is a quality running session? You know you're going to get the answer that we are using, and it's going to bother you. That's what I think.
I'm putting it into ChatGPT.
Oh, okay.
They're probably going to pull from our podcast. What if it pulls from what you've said this episode?
God bless the government.
What if they're updating their parameters right now and they heard you?
What's the answer?
It says a quality running session is a focused workout designed to improve specific aspects of running performance, such as speed, endurance, or efficiency. These sessions typically involved a structure plan with intensity, purpose, and progression. Below are examples of quality sessions tailored to various training goals. Then we have speed development, which is interval workouts, stamina building, which is tempo runs, long run with a purpose.
The quality long run.
Hill repeats, fartlek. What makes it quality? Specificity, intensity control, recovery, progression. That is what ChatGPT has said.
Okay. It used a lot of words to try to sound smart.
We need a better term than quality.
I agree, gentlemen.
All right. So
are you continuing this conversation?
No, we'll have the audience help us.
It's time to wrap up.
Everyone comment on what other term we should use.
Intensity is going to be a high intensity session.
But that one, I mean, ChatGPT said long run with a purpose. All right, we'll keep spinning the wheels on this. Send us off, one of you.
Brakken pushes the button. So Brakken, tell everybody to see you later.
Oh
See you
no, I
later.
need to plug my coaching. Everyone come work with me. I'm smart and awesome, and I will make you run faster. Or do hybrid.
We're going to edit that out as well.
Do you have any plans to do a High Rocks?
I might. I'm currently, I just PR'd my deadlift at 365, no belt. So that was fun. So
It's a good start.
yeah.